The year is 2004. An elite big man has won at least 5 of the last 6 MVPs. But there is a perimeter renaissance that is about to hit the basketball court. This group is about to enter their peak, but with the help of a few rule changes meant to reward athleticism, this new group of perimeter players are also in position to take over the league and take control away from the dominant bigs of that era. Hold up. The year is not 2004 was not true just for 2004. It was also true at the start of the 2024 season. It's still accurate heading into the 2025-2026 NBA season. We are back to the future. Welcome to my channel. This is Cyber TV and I'm the host Kevin. In this channel, I like to make videos covering the history of sports. Don't forget to like and sub. Anyway, let me first preface by saying that I've been watching the NBA since around 2002. My earliest memories of the league involved watching Wizards Jordan, Jazz Malone, Raptors Vince, Magic T-Mac, and Shaq and Kobe. I will always have a soft spot for that era and will always defend their inefficiency, as I believe they played in the most unfortunate era since the 1970s. The league was becoming extremely physical and defensive oriented, and that generation played in Jordan's shadows. It is the opposite problem from what today's group is dealing with. The league has become increasingly more offensive oriented and more open. In today's NBA, it is offense that is prioritized. Today's players are also playing in LeBron's shadow, who is still playing under MJ's shadow, no matter what his fan base wants you to believe. Anyway, with Mike's era, you had several promising bigs enter the league in the early and mid 90s, in prime position to take over once Jordan declined. And once Jordan did decline in his mid 30s, a new group of elite wings began to emerge. In LeBron's era, you had several promising bigs enter the league in the early and mid 2010s, in prime position to take over once LeBron declined. Once LeBron did decline in the mid 30s, a new group of elite wings began to emerge. You see the parallels? It's not exact, but it is similar. And as they say, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does often rhyme. So where am I going with this video? I'm going to discuss the similarities between this new generation of current and potential superstars and the players they remind me the most of from the 2000s. In my opinion, the best decade of basketball. All due respect to the 80s and the 90s. The 2020s has the potential to be right there with them, and it's because the talent right now is pretty insane. But we're not exactly in uncharted territory either, because all of these players have a spiritual predecessor from the 2000s. Let's start with the guys I could not fit in the thumbnail. Wade, Iverson, Nash, Dirk, Melo, and Houston. Who's that, you ask? Well, he's kind of a nice guy, but he does have a modern equivalent. And from that group, let's start with Dwayne Wade, who, to be honest, doesn't have a current equivalent that fully merits it. There's not a big, explosive combo guard with long arms, but the closest we have to him is Donovan Mitchell. He's a little smaller, but he also has a massive wingspan. He's a better three-point shooter, but he's not the playmaker that Wade was. He's been compared to Wade for as long as he's been pro, and it's still a solid comparison even today. His Cavaliers career has been a lot more notable than what we unfortunately saw with Wade. But Wade demonstrated early on that he was an all-time great with a dominant 2006 playoff run. Mitchell has not reached those heights, but he has been arguably the best player on 2 elite regular season teams in the 2021 Jazz and 2025 Cavs. And he's had some solid playoff runs, just no conference finals trip. Wade himself has been open to the comparisons, so I will stick with Mitchell being Wade's spiritual successor. For Iverson, you could also argue Mitchell, as both are undersized shooting guards. You can also mention Kyrie, but he's not the athlete that AI was, and this video is more so about players drafted since 2013. To me, that's roughly when this current generation entered the league. But a better comparison, even if Kyrie was considered, would be John Morant. He's a few inches bigger, but he's a scoring guard with tremendous athleticism. And like Iverson, he's been a thorn on the league's side. He did not play his usual level last season, but the Grizzlies were rolling, and I believe Ja will shoot down his critics as he enters what should be his best years. For Nash, the closest comparison might be Trae Young. Young is basically a smaller, more shot-happy Nash. If Nash played in today's game, I believe he would be scoring at a similar rate, but on much higher efficiency. Young still has ways to go to get to that level of offensive mastery, but it took a while for Nash to get there as well. But recently, Halliburton has made me question if perhaps he's a better comparison to Nash. He's a little bigger, but similar statistical profile, and the way he has ran the Pacers offense has been similar as well. Next up, Dirk. There's one guy that's extremely similar, currently playing for the Jazz. That would of course be Lauri Markkanen, another 7-foot stretch big. His numbers on the Jazz are extremely similar to Dirk's best years, but of course that was a different era, and Dirk played on some extremely slow-paced Mavs teams. You put Dirk's best versions today, and he's probably averaging at least 30. If Lauri can start doing that and give the Jazz some deep playoff runs, that comparison will be more meaningful. Stylistically, it's the comparison that makes the most sense. But that's where it ends. Now for Carmelo, I'm leaning towards Paolo Banchero, who has admitted to modeling some of his game from Carmelo. Not the most athletic, but he's a big skilled forward that uses that rare combo of size, strength, and skill to score against more athletic players. And now Allen Houston, a very good shooting guard in the early 2000s who could hit the three ball as well as anyone not named Steph today. If there's a guy today that reminds me a lot of Houston, it's Devin Booker. Another 6'6" off guard with a pure jumper. Booker's a better playmaker, Houston the better shooter, but they are similar otherwise. Now for the guys in my thumbnail. The main reason you likely clicked this video because you wanted to see if the pictures matched and why I chose those specific players. And yes, whoever's on the reverse for the 2000s group is who I consider the spiritual successor in today's game. Let's start with the bigs. This was a tough one as honestly all three of the dominant bigs today could be compared to the dominant bigs of the 2000s. But I chose Jokic to represent Shaq, Giannis to represent Duncan, and Embiid to represent Garnett. For Jokic, he's the best offensive big of his era, and arguably of all time. And his biggest literal competition for that title, all time, is Shaq. Both are oversized centers that use that size advantage to overpower their opponents. Both had fantastic touch around the rim, and both were skilled playmakers. But Jokic has the added boost of being an elite shooter from mid-range and deep, as well as not being a liability at the free throw line. Shaq was a notoriously poor shooter past 3 feet, and was often a liability from the free throw line. Neither man was known for their defense. Shaq had his moments, especially at his peak, but outside of that his defense was often underwhelming. The comparison isn't perfect, especially personality-wise, both very different, and their dominance is for very different reasons. For Shaq, it was his brute force and his vicious dunks. For Jokic, his playmaking ability as a passer and as a shot maker. But it's a very accurate comparison when looking at them as the dominant, oversized offensive engine of their time. You could also make a valid argument that Giannis is the modern Shaq, something Shaq himself has supported. Both are freak of natures that use their size and strength to score. Neither are known for their jump shot. But Giannis has a way better jumper and has always been more reliable from the free throw line. He's also more reliable on defense and has a more committed work ethic. All of these traits has me thinking that Duncan is a spiritual predecessor. Giannis won his lone title with Budenholzer, who was a member of the Spurs when Duncan was at his peak. Bud has compared Giannis to Duncan. Both are low-key power forwards that can play center. Both are two-way forces. Both are loyal to the small market team that drafted them. I do want to add, if Giannis does leave, I would not blame him. The Bucks organization is nowhere near the Spurs organization in the Duncan era. Anyway, both also are and likely will be underrated historically. Duncan is a top 5-10 player ever. Giannis isn't there yet, but he's, in my opinion, top 15, top 20 player ever, so he is not far off. Ultimately, Duncan makes the most sense, but the truth is that Giannis is a little bit of Shaq with his dominance, Duncan with his two-way play and small market loyalty, 2000s LeBron with his run and dunk style play, and Kobe with his work ethic and his Mamba mentality. That leaves us with Embiid, who has been injured lately, and when he has been playing, has not been playing at his usual level. But when he is healthy, he is as good as any in the regular season. He's an oversized center like Shaq, a two-way big like Duncan, but his closest spiritual predecessor from that era is probably Kevin Garnett. Like Garnett, Embiid is an MVP. Like Garnett, Embiid puts up historical box scores and impact. And like Garnett, Embiid falls off in the playoffs, which is why despite their regular season dominance and skill level, they're perceived as being a whole tier below the truly dominant bigs of their era. If there is a Dirk in this era in terms of comparable impact, it is Anthony Davis, who barely missed my cut. Not saying he's as good, but Davis is a perimeter-oriented big man who generally raises his game in the playoffs. That's Dirk-like, although his overall stat sheet stuffing and two-way play is more akin to Garnett. He missed the cut for his video as he was drafted in 2012, but Embiid and AD are the closest to a modern Dirk and KG that we currently have. And now for the perimeter players and their predecessors. This is going to be fun. It might also be controversial. Let's start with the smallest ones in the thumbnail, Vince and Ant. Ant gets compared to Michael Jordan, and rightfully so, because even though he's a few inches shorter, has a much smaller wingspan, and doesn't have anywhere near the same hands as MJ did, people have constantly been calling him the next MJ. That's a stretch. When Jordan retired, every elite perimeter player was called the next MJ, because people desperately wanted to see another Mike. One such player was Vince Carter. Unlike Ant, Vince was actually about the same size as Jordan. He had the same minutes, but very few have. Both Vince and Ant were high flyers that could shoot the three ball, and both at one point or another had their commitment to basketball questioned. So far though, Ant has been a more reliable two-way player and seems to be a better playoff player, so the comparison is a little faulty, but both were labeled the next MJ while not being quite that. The truth is, we probably won't see another MJ on the perimeter anytime soon, but we might see a perimeter player similar to Kobe, and that's where SGA comes in. Let's get one thing out of the way. SGA does not have the explosive bounce to his game that Kobe had, but Kobe was measured at 6'6" with a 6'11" wingspan, and SGA is also measured at 6'6" with a 6'11" wingspan. Also, what Jordan was measured at. Kobe was a fundamentally sound and uber-skilled player that played on both ends. SGA is fundamentally sound, uber-skilled, and also plays on both ends. Both guys have played point guard, shooting guard, and small forward, and have the skill sets to excel at all three positions. SGA himself has called Kobe one of his biggest inspirations. He is now an MVP, a scoring champ, and the champion, so the comparison is much more warranted now than a year ago. And the Thunder are in excellent position to win some more rings the rest of this decade. If he can lead them to at least 3 rings, I will feel way better about this comparison. It feels a little premature, but the tools are definitely there. One guy that might prevent SGA from being the biggest winner of his era, like Kobe arguably was, is Jason Tatum. I chose T-Mac as the predecessor because both are swingmen that are listed as 6'8", and both have a smooth but also frustrating game. It must also be pointed out that I made the thumbnail and most of the script before the 2024 championship. But to be fair, if T-Mac had a team like the 21st Celtics, he might have won Finals MVP. I'm just saying. McGrady was the better athlete and had more raw talent, but whether it was mindset or bad luck, T-Mac just never really saw much success in the playoffs. Tatum is the exact opposite. In that regard, he is more like Kobe. He's already challenged Kobe and LeBron for several age-related playoff records, but some of that might simply be because of the situation he entered with a great Boston team. T-Mac did not exactly have that. It's a flawed comparison, but again, when I initially thought of this video, Tatum was still ringless and a frustrating playoff player on teams that were unquestionably stacked. Even now, after the 2024 Celtics title, it's still pretty accurate, as he did not win Finals MVP or even the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. That and his overall performance in the playoffs is as perplexing as McGrady's entire career. So honestly, it's still a good comparison, even with their vastly different playoff resumes. And last but certainly not least, Luka's spiritual predecessor is LeBron. When I initially worked on this video, Luka was a Dallas Maverick, but now him and LeBron are teammates. Still have a hard time believing that the NBA allowed that to happen, but no Chris Paul to the Lakers in 2011. Anyway, in terms of pre-draft hype, one guy was labeled generational by everyone. The other was only seen as generational to those who actually watch the EuroLeague. But once Luka's NBA career began, it became clear that he was always going to follow his idol's footsteps. The numbers Luka has averaged is very comparable, even when adjusting for pace and role changes, to what LeBron was putting up at the same age range. And both players led their team to a finals where they lost to a dynasty caliber team. Both LeBron and Luka love being the center of attention on offense, but in terms of skill set, that's where the comparisons end. Luka is a comparable scorer and a flat-out better shooter. LeBron was a better defender and athlete. Luka likely would not play long enough to challenge LeBron's career numbers, but so far he's averaging better raw numbers. Both of them were hyped up as potential challenger to his hairness, despite having a very different style of play, and both have had Kyrie as a teammate. Both are linked to Rick Carlisle and Jason Kidd. Luka was coached by both, while LeBron was embarrassed by both in 2011. Last, both love to hug the baseline to secure low-value rebounds, but both are also some of the most brilliant basketball minds of the 21st century. And while the fit hasn't been ideal, the Lakers have a chance with both on the roster due to their versatility.
So here's a last-minute edit regarding Wembanyama. When I initially worked on this video back in 2023, he just started his NBA career. So I didn't really see the point including him because at that point we really didn't know what kind of player he was. And plus, the reality is, he just does not have a 2000 equivalent. He really doesn't have an NBA equivalent, period. If there's an NBA player that deserves to be called the anomaly, it's not Jason Tatum, it's Wembanyama.
So in conclusion, are the 2000s really back? Is there a better spiritual predecessor for any of the players listed? Let me know. Cyber out.